Yeah, so, I mean, that's what I thought too. But anyway, we have some questions to get into. In fact, this is going to be our first, like, full-on Sexoterica kind of Q&A. It's a full episode, but it's all of your questions and our answers.
I'm excited.
Yeah, no, I think this is going to be cool. I mean, we've gotten so this is episode 5. If we're tallying them.
Wow.
I don't really number them, but like if we're going to tally how many we've done, I'm amazed at the amount of questions that we've gotten.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and thank you, by the way.
Yes. Thank you to everybody for your remarkable interest in these subjects. It certainly makes me feel better about everything. But anyway,
yeah, I love that we've gotten so much feedback already just for 4 episodes.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, not just the questions, but the positive feedback. I've talked about this on my weekly Sovryn Q&As as well. Like, it's just amazing how much people are enjoying the show. And so we thank you so much for that. And I always think it's it's so hard, when in the age of Google and Perplexity and, all these different things, you can just look up questions yourselves. So to ask people like us, well, what do you think about this? Or what about this? Is, just precious. Absolutely precious.
I think the audience knows something that most people don't know, which is that there's some questions that cannot be answered on the internet.
Well, preach that.
You got to go to the fringes.
Yeah, the answers may not be on the internet. Might be in some podcasts, but not on the internet. So, yeah, well said. Okay. So let's get into, so we have questions that have been sent to me through messages, have been sent via email, also voice messages. In fact, I got permission for this. I'm going to play some of the questions that we got because hilariously, sometimes when you use AI to do transcripts, it completely fucks those up.
Wow, what a shocker.
Yeah, right.
Who would have guessed?
Exactly. So, and these audio ones are actually coming from Sek Megora of the Agora podcast, which of course I recommend anybody listen to. Always great conversations going on there. And I've been on there. Actually, you, Ellen, as well. You've been on there. We did that amazing food panel.
Yeah, we did.
That was awesome. And we were not the only plant-based people on that.
That was an epic recording. What was that, like 3 hours long?
It was long. I remember it being quite long. So yeah, folks, I mean, lots of stuff to check out at the Agora podcast, link in the show notes for that. But yeah, let's get into sex questions.
I'm ready.
And yeah, he's got a bunch from different episodes we've done so far. So here we go.
So I'm listening to Pyramid of Influence. 2 things. And God damn it, I should just text this out so you don't have to use that AI horseshit. But, one, the problem I've always had with the Drake equation is, wouldn't you have to already know how much life exists in the universe to understand the probability of life existing? Am I wrong on that? Or is that correct? Maybe I don't understand complex math enough, but it seems to me like if you were trying to come up with an equation to understand probability around a particular thing, you would have to understand how much exists and how much doesn't. And that's not something we know. So, again, you're just coming up with fucking a mathematical formulation that's just a fucking guess. You're just guessing. And that's most of fucking science and mathematics. It's just educated guesses.
So, Ellen, you as the resident scientist, I'm actually...
Oh, boy.
I'm going to let you take this one on the Drake equation. So go ahead, go for it. I mean, the idea that, again, that, wait, like, if you know how much life is out there, doesn't that mean that you must know how much life is out there? Like, I kind of get what he's saying, but what's your response to that?
Yeah, so I think what he's saying is essentially correct. Yes, you can't solve the Drake equation unless you actually know the proportion of life that exists in the universe, but it's actually worse than that.
Okay.
So I hear what Sek is saying. Yes, we all have a problem with the Drake equation in a literal sense. It was not meant to be literal, though. It was meant to be a sort of communication device for scientists. Around the time that SETI was being developed, Drake came up with this equation to kind of spark this conversation about life and what's our probability of finding it.
Right.
So I think the point of this equation is just to say, look, this is going to be really hard. We might not find anything, and here's our chances. And even if we could make a guess at what our chances actually are, which we can't, by the way, they would be very remote. So I'll just break down the Drake equation really quickly so you can understand what I'm saying. Like, it's actually worse than what Sek is implying.
Well, wait, yeah. Well, okay, go ahead.
So the Drake equation basically says that it's trying to calculate the number of active communicative extraterrestrial civilizations.
Yep, okay.
So that number is dependent on all of these variables that I'm about to list being multiplied with each other.
Right.
So it's fraction times fraction times fraction times fraction, which makes an even smaller number every time you multiply by another fraction.
Okay, well, wait, so
I just want to list out these variables first.
Go for it.
So that it's clear what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So the first number is R star, which is the average rate of star formation. The next variable is the fraction of those stars that have planets. The next number is N sub E, which is the average number potentially supporting life.
Okay.
The next variable is F sub L, which is the fraction that have developed life at some point in their history. The next variable, F sub I, is the fraction that developed intelligent life.
Okay.
The next fraction is that it represents the number of planets with intelligent life that are releasing detectable signs into space. So radio communication or something like that.
Okay.
And then the final variable is L, which is the length of time for those planets with intelligent life to have been releasing detectable signals. So multiply all those fractions together times, it's just going to be like a very small number is what I'm trying to say. And
it's going to be a small number?
Yeah, it's going to be an incredibly small number.
Okay.
Because we've got, you need to know the fraction of stars that have planets with intelligent life that are creating some sort of signal. And, all of those fractions would be incredibly remote, considering that there's billions of planets in existence within the universe.
Right.
What fraction would you estimate have intelligent life that are creating some sort of communication signal within our lifetime while we're searching?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, so
it's going to be like a fraction that has 20 zeros in front of it.
Yeah, okay. So here's the odd thing to me is, and you can correct me on this, like the Drake equation is usually used as, because there's something called the Fermi paradox, all right, which I'm very familiar with. But so the Drake equation is usually used to say, oh no, there's life everywhere in the universe. Like that there should be life everywhere in the universe. Yeah,
well, who's using it and what's their basis for estimating that there's life everywhere?
Sure, yes.
Because we've never seen another Earth-like planet that is actually Earth-like enough to have life that we can detect.
Well, wait, okay, so I agree with you, but NASA does not say that. NASA says, oh no, we have a whole list of extrasolar planets that are just like Earth, that are in the Goldilocks zone. They can't prove always that they're like that, But they always, every once in a while that NASA needs some funding, they toss out like some info. Oh, we found this planet in Alpha Centauri or something, and it must support life or whatever. So,
all right, but did they detect life?
No.
Did they find evidence of life?
No. The best time that we've found SETI has encountered things, but they don't repeat themselves. Like there have been, what are considered like radio signals of signs of life, but they're non-repeating, so they don't get counted,
There's plenty of sources of radio waves in the universe.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's why you look for the repeating, like for repeating, like what seems to be an intelligent signal, whatever
something
that looks like.
Maybe not repeating, but having some sort of pattern.
Right. Yeah. So, because like, I understand what you're saying, the way you're like honing it down to where we get to intelligent life. Like, yeah, I think I've even seen where NASA has come out and said, yeah, there would only be like maybe 10,000.
Look, I'm not just doing this. This is the Drake equation.
Right, right. No, right.
When this was written, they knew that it was going to be very, very remote chances of finding anything.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, that you bring this up, because I think there is a cultural meme almost that the Drake equation says, no, there's got to be intelligent life all over the place.
But
and then
most of these variables that I listed, we have no way of knowing what that actual number is.
Right. So, but then like the Fermi paradox is saying, wait a minute, and this is why it's called a paradox, because Francis Drake is saying, no, there should be life everywhere, but how come we're not getting those signals of it? And
what does everywhere mean? Because the universe is a huge, huge place. There's plenty of planets, solar systems, galaxies that life could exist within that's outside of our achievable communication reach. So like that last variable, length of time that they're releasing detectable signals, that could happen like 100 years previous to our capability of receiving those signals, or it could happen 10,000 years after, or a million years before.
Right.
Time scales vary vastly across the universe as far as developed stars, developed planets, developed life.
Sure.
And that's why I'm saying this is worse than what Sek is saying, because like all of these we cannot guess.
Yeah.
We can like maybe make an educated guess, but like how educated of a guess can you make about solar systems that exist within galaxies that are, on the farther reaches of our telescopic ability to see?
Right. Yeah, I think there is, and I'm just shocked that I never terribly thought about this. And I'm trying to think of like where, because I know this is, so again, it's a very popular concept. I love that you're bringing this up and you're spot on. Okay. But there's a very popular concept. And I think what happens is like people, and this would include Carl Sagan, because I know I've heard it from him. People like stop halfway in the Drake equation. Like you went all the way, and rightfully so, to where it's like, oh no, yeah, okay. Like the chance of intelligent life, or what I call sapient, very minimal. Like that's what you're saying, correct? And that's what the Drake equation says?
All of these variables would be incredibly small. Yes.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Small fraction. I think life here on Earth is unique in the sense that like we have a very healthy, biodiverse planet.
Yes.
And we have seen evidence of like multiple intelligent species.
Right.
Though only one so far has built radio communication devices.
Right.
As far as we know.
Yeah. This is really fascinating because again, like, so the Fermi paradox, which I'm way more familiar with, is saying like, okay, wait a minute. The likelihood, because you have just within the Milky Way galaxy, and how many galaxies are there out there, right? Just within the Milky Way galaxy, you have literally billions of stars. Within those billions of stars, mathematically, it's highly likely that there are lots of planets that fall into the Goldilocks zone, right?
Maybe, but we don't have any proof of that.
Yeah. So, but I think everybody in the Drake equation, or most people commonly in popular science and in culture, stop right there, right? Like that's where they cut it off. But the Drake equation, you're saying, keeps going and says, no, but then, okay, it's in the Goldilocks zone, but then we need more. And I've always argued for that. And I'm just kind of stunned that I never realized the Drake equation actually went that far.
Yeah.
To where it's looking for intelligent, it's not just about like the possibility for any kind of life, but actually sapient or intelligent life.
So this
that's
is
amazing.
another thing. I'm glad you brought up the Fermi paradox, because this plays really well into one of the answers to the Fermi paradox within that last variable of the Drake equation that has to do with the length of time that civilizations communicate. One of the responses to the Fermi paradox is, well, maybe we haven't been receiving signals or communication from other beings on other planets, because once they reach that technological developmental stage where they can, it's almost a guarantee that within, a couple hundred years maybe, they self-destruct.
Yeah, this is the great filter. Exactly. Where once you get to that ability even to go into space, you've probably developed nukes and you wiped yourself out.
Right. So if we did receive a radio signal from another planet that's 1,000 light years away, by the time we receive that, they're already gone.
Yeah. I mean, and so then you also, is it the Kardashev scale, which talks about like the different levels of energy harnessing that a civilization reaches?
Proposed in 1964 by the Soviet astronomer Nikolai Kardashev, this scale is a method for classifying hypothetical extraterrestrial civilizations based on the amount of energy they can command. Here is a breakdown of this magnificent and terrifying hierarchy. Type 0, the infancy of power. A Type 0 civilization is a fledgling still bound to the cradle of its planet and reliant on the most primitive of energy sources, the burning of dead organisms. This is where humanity currently languishes. Our species as a whole is still in its infancy. We are a civilization that has yet to even fully harness the power of our own world. We are, on this grand scale, a figure of mediocrity, estimated to be at approximately a 0.7. We are a house divided, squabbling over scraps of power, while the main feast lies untouched. Type 1, mastery of the planetary domain. A Type 1 civilization has achieved absolute dominance over its home planet. It wields the entirety of the energy that falls upon its world from its parent star, approximately 10 to the 16th watts. This is not merely the passive collection of solar power. It is the active control over all terrestrial forces. Type 2, the stellar overlords. A Type 2 civilization has outgrown its planetary cradle and seizes control of its entire star system. It harnesses the total energy output of its star, a staggering 10 to the 26th watts. Type 3, the galactic emperors. A Type 3 civilization is a force of truly biblical proportions. It commands the power of an entire galaxy, approximately 10 to the 36th watts. A Type 3 civilization would be a truly galactic entity with a presence across countless star systems. They would likely harness the energy of not just individual stars, but also the cataclysmic power of quasars and the supermassive black hole at their galaxy's core. They could manipulate the very fabric of space-time, creating and traversing wormholes as easily as we cross a room. The beings of a Type 3 civilization would be so far beyond our comprehension as to be indistinguishable from gods. They could be a cybernetic and biological synthesis, or a collective consciousness of immense power and intellect, or their physical forms could be honed to perfection, and their minds capable of processing information on a galactic scale. Some have dared to speculate beyond Kardashev's original framework, proposing Type 4, beings who harness the energy of the entire universe, or Type 5, entities who can manipulate the multiple dimensions. However, the Kardashev scale is not without its critics. Some argue that it is a simplistic measure, focusing solely on energy consumption while ignoring advancements in information processing or miniaturization, or even mystical powers harnessed from the universe itself. There is also the sobering question of whether any civilization could survive the immense technological and social pressures of such a climb. Without sufficient evolution, a transition between each stage is fraught with the peril of self-destruction.
Now, we do, one of the more popular possibilities of encountering sapient life, like extraterrestrial sapient life, was a moment where people were seeing like this repeating pattern of light. And there was actually belief that we were seeing through a Dyson sphere, and that's why it looked like a repeating pattern. It wasn't a pulsar, even though pulsars used to be like considered a sign of intelligent life on other planets, but
only because they were emitting such strong regular radiation.
Right. It was that repeating pattern. Yes.
So
exactly.
didn't they determine that possible Dyson sphere was actually just a cloud of asteroids?
Yeah, yes. I don't remember what the exact answer was, but that's been, basically tossed out as like, no way. That wasn't that. I mentioned earlier how like NASA keeps claiming that we found these, planets in Goldilocks zone that are Earth-like. Again, the thing nobody ever hears, I've said this so many times on my other shows, the thing nobody hears is that planets get removed off of that list all the time.
Right.
Like that list actually gets smaller, not bigger. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so I wanted to respond to the Drake equation by saying that I think, it was a very exciting time for science when SETI was created and opened because, wow, we actually get to have a chance at receiving some sort of communication.
Right.
However, that may have just been for funding that people are constantly bringing attention to the Drake equation to, bring in more money to projects like SETI or SETI itself.
Yeah.
However, I think that the radio communication technology that is used in SETI is a form of technology that we will have to leave behind if we ever have a chance of communicating with other intelligent life. It's, in my opinion, not the right direction to go.
Interesting. Do you want to, and it's okay if you don't want to now, we could save it for another episode, but do you want to elaborate on that more? That's fascinating.
Well, let me respond to that question by asking you another question.
Okay. Go for it.
So, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you've mentioned to me the story in the Kabbalah about certain masters having communicated with other beings or visited other planets, and they actually know how many planets exactly there are that have life on them, and it's like 40,000?
18,000.
18,000.
Yep.
So how did they find that out? How did they travel to those other planets? How did they communicate with those other beings?
You're good. You're very good.
There's a reason I'm sitting here.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I want to. There's so much I want to say to that, but I mean,
you don't have to answer it. It could just be a hypothetical question, or it could be a rhetorical question, however you want to view it.
Okay. All right. So I love that because yes, they did, and the very fast short answer TLDR is they teleported.
The mundane world sees travel as a brute force contest against distance and time, but the masters, those whose will and spirit are forged in the fires of sacred knowledge, understand that space itself is merely another medium to be commanded. This is not the clumsy teleportation of science fiction. It is a testament to spiritual dominion over the physical realm. The key that unlocks this concept is Kafitsat Haderek, which translates literally to the jumping of the path or the shortening of the way. Many will recognize this from Frank Herbert's remarkable canon of only 6 Dune novels as the term Kwisatz Haderach. It is the miraculous contraction of a journey, allowing one to traverse vast distances in an impossibly short amount of time. This is not a violation of natural law, but the imposition of a higher, divine law upon it. The Gemara contains several accounts of the Talmudic sages for whom Kafitsat Haderek occurred, often as a sign of their profound righteousness or the urgency of their mission. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, the Talmud recounts that he was travelling to redeem captives when he came upon the river Genai. He commanded the river, "Genai, divide your waters for me," and it obeyed. This is a form of environmental mastery that is a cousin to Kefizat Haderach, demonstrating a will so powerful that the elements themselves are subjugated. There's also the 3 sages travelling to Pumbedita. The Talmud again tells of 3 sages, including Rabbi Eliezer, who were threatened by a shipmaster. The ground beneath them miraculously contracted, and they found themselves instantly at their destination of Pumbedita. Here, the shortening of the way was an explicit act of divine salvation prompted by their merit. Avraham Avinu. Midrashic sources like Bereshit Rabbah state that when Abraham rushed to save his nephew Lot, he experienced Kefizat Haderach, covering a journey of many days in a fraction of the time. His righteous zeal literally compressed the world before him. However, it is in the esoteric texts that the true mechanism of this power is illuminated, such as the Zohar. Here, Kefizat Haderach is not merely a miracle that happens to a person, but a power that can be wielded by a master. The Zohar speaks of those who know how to use Shemot Kodesh, the holy names of God. By weaving these names, by uttering them with the proper kavanah, its intention, and strength of soul, a Kabbalist could theoretically impress his will upon the matrix of creation itself. The Zohar states, with a certain word, the world can be crossed from one end to the other. This is the ultimate expression of power, not a crude machine, but the focused vibration of a divine name, spoken by a worthy vessel. Stories abound of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his inner circle, the Hevraya Kadisha, moving through space in non-linear ways during their mystical discussions. Their consciousness, so elevated, was not entirely bound by physical locality. The Ari, Rabbi Isaac Luria, the great 16th century Kabbalist of Tzfat, was said to be able to visit the burial sites of sages all over Israel in a single day, learning Torah from their souls. His disciples believed he used Kefizat Haderach, powered by his unparalleled mystical attunement, to accomplish this. This is only a fraction of a hidden truth. The universe is not a dead thing of fixed laws. It is a living utterance of the divine, and for those few with the strength, will, and hidden knowledge, its grammar can be rewritten. The way, even between planets, can truly be shortened.
Whether what we would say in Kabbalah or mysticism in general, out of the body or in the body, whether they did it while, like their whole body went, or just it was more like a remote viewing of some kind, something like that. That's what they did.
But they didn't use advanced machinery to do that.
No. But the reason, and I just want to say this super briefly, at the same time, that technology is just as much discussed in Kabbalah as the ability to go to other places, by basically what we would call today teleporting. So like starships or spaceships of some kind, a ship that could go from Earth to the moon is talked about in Torah.
Sure.
And so it's a ship, it's a physical technology. So I just want to make that clear that that's still part of the program. But yes, you're right. So it's teleporting. It required no technology at all, or electronic technology. Yeah. Yeah. So is that your answer?
So that might be pointing at what I'm saying is more likely, to lead to a successful communication with some other type of life form.
Sure.
And it almost sounds like psychic powers of some kind.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, right on. I mean, if that's the direction you're going, I agree with you. Even the one of the more popular theoretical designs for faster than light travel on an actual ship, like the I don't think I pronounced this guy's name right, but the Alcubierre drive. One of the kind of the hidden things behind that is actually thought. So it kind of proves the point, that if you're going to go somewhere else, thought is part of the process, so yeah. Okay. That's good. That's good. But I mean, to Sex's point, this is an overall thing that I think is very valid he's brought this up before, that like, how can you actually know anything? And this is going to get into another question of his later on. How do you actually know anything within the universe without being able to have information from outside of it? Do you get what I'm saying by that, Ellen? Like how can you, like, you can only make definitive statements about objective statements about something by being outside of it.
Right.
And I understand the logical question, and it is logical, and it deserves an answer. My argument has always been that, well, the Book of Zohar is something that's actually largely inspired by a being that does exist outside of the capital U universe that we exist within. So you do have like the objective truth about existence coming, from that, not the truth, but a truth anyway.
Okay. Well, let's just assume that number is accurate.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
18,000 planets
Yep.
in the whole universe that
Sure.
have intelligent life on them. There are 100 quintillion planets in the universe. So, or
Yeah.
at least that's estimated, because
Yeah.
we are, limited by our technology.
Yeah.
So you do the math. I'm not going to do that right now, but that's a really, really, really tiny number.
So
yeah, 18,000
18,000 compared to that is
divided
a really tiny...
by
Yep.
100 quintillion.
Yeah.
So, if you knock off the zeros,
Yep.
that's like, it's mind-boggling how small that number is.
18,000 is so small compared to that.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I agree. And, well, let me be clear, too.
So I'm saying
Yes.
that would be the answer to the Drake equation according to Kabbalists.
Well, what's really shocking is that if I'm recalling, and I could look it up, but like if I'm recalling that NASA article correctly, and their claim that there was only 10,000, like their math isn't that far off in the grand scheme from what the Kabbalists were saying.
Sure.
Like
that's pretty close, but
Yeah.
still, like, you're talking about the entire fucking universe.
Right.
Even if there is 10,000 or 20,000,
Yeah.
like, distributed across the universe, like, there's no way we could... I'm just saying the chances of being within reachable communication distance is very, 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 very unlikely.
The concept of 18,000 worlds in Kabbalah is not a matter of empirical evidence in the mundane sense, but a profound esoteric teaching rooted in the textual and spiritual bedrock of Kabbalistic tradition. The primary origin of this specific number is found in the Talmud. The Gemara discusses the daily schedule of the Holy One and states that, by night, God rides a light cherub and floats in 18,000 worlds. This statement is derived from a mystical interpretation of a verse in Psalms. The chariots of God are 2 myriads, thousands of angels of Shinan. The sages interpret Ribbatayim, 2 myriads, as 20,000, and Alfei Shinan as a reduction of 2,000, thus arriving at the figure of 18,000. The evidence for what these worlds are is found in the commentaries of the great sages and mystics who have approached this number with the intellectual and spiritual force it deserves. There are 2 primary schools of thought. Many Kabbalists, including Rabbi Isaac Luria, understand these worlds as primarily spiritual dimensions. These are not planets in the physical sense, but rungs on the great ladder of existence, populated by angelic beings and souls. They exist within the 4 worlds of Kabbalistic cosmology: Atzilut, emanation; Beria, creation; Yetzirah, formation; and Asiya, action, but represent a multiplicity of divine states of being. In this view, God's travelling through these worlds is not a physical journey, but a metaphor for the extension of divine providence and consciousness throughout all levels of reality. The Zohar, the cornerstone of Kabbalah, speaks of worlds without number, likening each star to a separate world, further emphasizing the infinite nature of divine manifestation beyond our limited physical plane. These are realms of pure power and spirit, accessible not by vessel of steel, but by the disciplined will of the mystic. There is a potent and compelling minority view, however, that disagrees with the Ari, and that takes this concept literally. The 14th century philosopher and astronomer Rabbi Hasdai Crescas, a man of formidable intellect, argued in his work Or Hashem, Light of the Lord, that there is nothing in Jewish theology that precludes the existence of other physical worlds. He boldly cites the Talmudic passage of the 18,000 worlds as evidence for this. His logic is simple. If these worlds require God's providence, it implies they are inhabited, for an empty world has no need of supervision. This line of reasoning was later championed by others, such as Rabbi Pinchas Eliyahu Horowitz of Vilna. He asserted that not only do other worlds exist, but they are inhabited by intelligent beings. However, he maintained that only our world was granted the Torah, and therefore only humanity possesses Bechira and the ultimate spiritual purpose that comes with it. The inhabitants of these other 18,000 worlds exist to reflect the glory of the Creator, but they do not stand at the nexus of spiritual conflict and mastery as we do. The reality of the nature of the 18,000 worlds is a combination of both these views, the spiritual interpretation and the literal. The mode of travel between these worlds is spiritual, the light cherub, a colourful term for the Kafitzat Hadarak, the shortening of the way, and the worlds themselves are physical, inhabited by sapient beings that Kabbalists have indeed encountered. So to understand, the evidence for the 18,000 worlds is not to be found in the weak, materialist proofs of modern Western science. The universe is far more complex and filled with more power and wonders than the mediocre mind can possibly conceive.
Yeah, I mean, even the Fermi paradox would say that, like, okay, you know, even if you're going at very slow speeds in space, you could still traverse the entire universe in millions of years.
Millions of years.
Well, right.
Yeah.
But I mean, let's consider scale. You know, I mean, I don't think that there is a beginning to the universe. But
also, what direction are they going?
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. But right.
Are they even going to cross our path?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, in the popular scientific idea that the universe is 13.5, 13.6 billion years old, whatever. Okay, they change the number all the time because they have a problem with the Methuselah star. But, a few million years inside of 13 billion isn't that much, right? Like, that's not a terribly long period of time.
So consider what could go wrong while you're traveling.
Oh, for sure. Sure. Yeah. I mean, the chances of that, like, of you successfully doing it are nil. You're totally right. Yeah. But I'm amazed that, like, as we've kind of almost done a rediscovery, it seems, of the Drake equation here, like, it actually supports the Kabbalistic statement, that. But then, yeah, I'm still so baffled by this.
I think the Fermi paradox was created by somebody who's confused by, like, they thought that the Drake equation indicated that the number of planets with life that can communicate within our lifetime should be much greater than it is. And they're like, convinced that that is true by marketing or whatever. I don't know. It just sounds like there's an agenda behind this, maybe, which makes it a little fishy.
Yeah.
But, like, if somebody really did believe that the answer to the Drake equation was a larger number, then, it would seem like a paradox. Why are they not communicating with us?
Yeah. Again,
but, like, they're not out there. That's why.
Yeah, right.
If they are out there, they're way too far away.
Right. Yeah. So, it's all a matter of likelihood, and so that's all. I mean, that's all Rochambeau. I mean, that's dice. It's
also, if you think about the universe as a giant bowling ball or a giant beach ball, and our solar system is a grain of sand somewhere within that sphere. Right. Like, if you draw a bunch of straight lines through that sphere, what are the chances that any one of them is going to intersect with that grain of sand?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. I mean, and to be clear, like the 18,000 number is talking about sapient life. It's talking about intelligent life. Like, there could be animal life, different protozoa or whatever, like, all over the goddamn place. Sure.
I mean, probably there's some sort of bacteria-like stuff floating around space somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, there could even be, fucking purgles or whatever. There could be space whales going around, like fine, like, okay, but, and maybe they are intelligent. I don't know, so I mean that's a whole other part of it. And that really speaks to like sex point. Like, again, it's all guesswork. It's all like, I mean, and science isn't even about that. Like science is about predictions. It's not even necessarily about truth. I mean,
and
like
politics certainly is not about truth.
for sure. Yeah. When applied in there, no doubt. So I think sex point is a good one. Ultimately, he's right on. But I'm just like, I'm also kind of amazed. Like the way I have heard the Drake equation used, like it's not the same here.
You also have to take into account, like, I think there might be a variable missing in this equation.
Mm-hmm.
And that variable, in my mind, would be the motivation or the interest in communicating with other planets.
Right.
Other civilizations. Because, like, what if we're the weird ones? We're the only ones that are like, oh, I'd like to speak to our alien friends across the way.
Yeah.
Maybe on other planets, they just don't want to do that, or they don't care to, or they're too scared.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's reasons why maybe they wouldn't want to.
Yeah, this was actually, and not that he has any business talking about this, but whatever, it's fine. We all like to armchair. But Edward Snowden actually, like, this was his claim for the answer to the Fermi paradox. Why we haven't heard from, intelligent life elsewhere is because they don't want you to know. Like, if you knew you could be found, you shut the hell up. And like you encrypt your shit, it's like, no, I don't, if there's like other alien, holy hell, we don't want them coming here, leave us alone. I mean, we've all seen Independence Day, but so, oh boy, we could get into so many subjects around that. Anything else you want to answer in on this one?
Anyway, I hope we answered your question, Sec. Thank you for sending that one in.
Yeah, it was great.
That
created a conversation that was incredibly enlightening. So let's go to the next part of his question, because we've got more to get into. We want to get to them.
So there's that, and also when you're talking about level 1 beings taking on corporeal form, something I've thought for a long time is, these beings don't actually have form. And you kind of said this, but they sometimes take on form, or they can take on form. I think we ascribe them form. And that's why their form changes over time and culture. It's like our consciousness is, or our brains, is trying to manifest something so that our brains can make sense of it. That's why at one point these are aliens, at one point in the past they're angels, or they're fairies, or they're gods, or they're pan, or whatever the thing. And it's just our brain trying to comprehend these forms, these beings that don't actually have a form. We create the form so that we can interact with it.
Okay, so I mean, without doing like a full rehash, people can listen to the whole episode, Pyramid of Influence, that we did, where I talked about like level 1 were like these, really, really powerful entities and beings and forces and all of that. Potentially like things that have been attributed to like maybe angels, stuff like that. Okay, so the idea, I mean, Ellen, I'd love to get your take on this. I mean, the idea that what they're, these level 1 beings who are corporeal optional, right? Mm-hmm. Like sometimes they can be, they don't have to be. And they just take on whatever form makes the most sense to us as humans at the time. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting theory.
Mm-hmm.
I think just like the first half of Sex Question, this is something that no human can answer. Because there's no way that we can understand or comprehend the answer to this question. But
unless we became level 1 as well, which
unless
we
did, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so like just as in the Drake equation, there's no way for us to actually answer what that number is without being outside of the universe, knowing everything within.
Right.
We couldn't answer this question unless we were like a level 1 being. Mm-hmm. However, I think it's a really interesting thought experiment, and I definitely see some potential in this theory. Like, I also have my own theories that I think are kind of fucking nuts, but
Hey,
I
we do
talk
this show
about
for.
them with you, and
Yeah.
you seem to find them interesting. So
Oh, yes.
maybe I'll repeat a portion of it here. I kind of agree with Sek on this, in the sense that, like with white light, for example, you shine it through a prism, you get to see a full spectrum of color because you're separating out the individual wavelengths that compose white light. So
Right.
white light is a superposition of a bunch of different types of light waves. But when you shine it through a prism, you separate them out so that we can see the full rainbow. But there's actually way more light than what we can see visibly.
Right.
We just get to experience the rainbow because that's what our biology allows us to see.
Sure.
So maybe it's kind of the same thing with these level 1 beings. Like when you see an angel, maybe you're seeing, a certain color on the light spectrum.
Yeah.
But it's actually like a projection through a prism or something like that. Maybe it's a multi-dimensional creature that is just showing us like a single slice of its actual existence,
Yeah. Yeah.
Or maybe, like what he's saying, there's something far more complex, but our brains can't totally comprehend it, so we just kind of give it the form that makes sense to us.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I agree with Sek overall. I mean, I think there are some that play at level 1 where, no, they have a set form, that they may go with like all the time. And this could get into kind of a longer answer, but I also agree with you, Ellen. I mean, on everything you just laid out. I think one of the interesting things, because, one of the confusions we make, again, we were just talking about like extraterrestrial life. What about interdimensional life? Right? That like exists basically on the same plane, in the same spot you're standing right now, but it's operating at a different modality. Okay. Now there are people, lots of people who, just like you have consistency in reports of dealing with, say, extraterrestrial life or claimed extraterrestrial life, like the Greys or whatever, and like there's this consistency in some what we could call interdimensional experiences, if you believe they are that, through the use of like DMT, even doing extended DMT sessions. Okay. People, in fact, there's a whole book, I've shared it with you, Ellen. There's whole books where people are like telling you, like they're collecting these, they're almost like making a map of these other quote unquote dimensions. And, and these beings, like, because it's that consistent when they go through these experiences. One of the common ones are mantis beings. And like everybody kind of sees the same thing. Now, I've heard interviews with people who have done some of the more like extended DMT trips, or experiences. And they, and others have reported, they said that basically said exactly what Sek said, that like the mantis beings, we take this shape so it's something that you can understand, but this is not what we look like, and so you do have some reports of that from these experiences. And again, it's not necessarily just anecdote, even though anecdote and N of 1 are completely valid. like that, though those should not be invalidated. I mean, you can take them with different, shall we say, grains of salt, but they should not be invalidated. But these are things that come from multiple reports all over the world.
So that raises the question, if they are taking a form that they believe we can understand, then our thoughts must have some sort of impact on their existence, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
So they are able to perceive, or at least receive, whatever brainwaves we're sending out.
Yeah, 100%. I mean,
and like, I don't even want to say brainwaves because I've listened to Ingo Swann a lot recently, and he always talks about how the mind is what has the psychic experience, not the brain. They're two separate things. The mind is something that exists outside of the body. It contains the whole body, but it's not anywhere localized.
Right.
So it's actually like a full body experience.
Yeah.
The mind.
Yeah.
So they're able to perceive whatever it is that we are thinking or able to comprehend, and then they choose a form based on that. Right. So then what Sek is saying is true, that based on culture and, changes in popular mythology, they could be taking on a different form.
Yeah, for sure. We talked about the biofield that we experienced very directly, like the theory's been around for a long time, but for you and I, like it was a very direct experience recently during a ayahuasca experience.
Ayahuasca.
Where we felt that biofield. And I think once you're in that biofield, oh yeah, like your mind processes between two entities, two beings, like are intermingling, and you're not even like touching yet. Not that anything ever really touches anyway. Of course, we always talk about that. Everything just vibrates, to each other, but
they're receptive to our emanations.
Right. But it's something that what you're saying is so beautiful as well, because it goes to show just how co-creative we are, even at those higher levels of influence and power, and existence within the universe. So yeah, I'm also kind of reminded of the greatest television show ever made. What is that, Ellen?
Babylon 5?
Oh yeah, that's it. Right. No disagreement, I hear. Anyway, so
Nope.
I'm reminded of the Vorlons, who also like genetically programmed alien species to, when they see a Vorlon outside of their encounter suit, they see like something different, like some kind of holy entity from, their respective mythologies.
Like it would look like an angel to us, but
Right.
to another species it might look like
it would look like a Minbari angel or something.
Right, like a holy hog or a holy giraffe or something like that.
Yeah, and so like basically the idea is that there's this very ancient alien civilization that, genetically modified other sapient beings millions of years, or, hundreds of thousands of years ago, whatever, to respond positively, to them whenever they are seen. And the idea that sort of thing has been done, yeah, I don't rule that out. That there is also like some kind of genetic manipulation component, to us like experiencing things in that way or whatever. Just tossing that out there. I'm not saying I have evidence for that. I'm not saying the Zohar says that at all. Though I think Zecharia Sitchin, old friend, dearly missed, would might suggest something along those lines, or might point out that ancient text would actually say that there was some genetic manipulation done on humans at a certain point many thousands of years ago. But that's a separate conversation.
Yes.
So
the Adam 1 and Adam 2 story.
Yeah, which at some point we're going to have to talk about, because that's big. That's big stuff, and even goes beyond Sitchin. So yeah. I think Sek has a point, and there are people who independently, but consistently from each other, or independently of each other, but consistently report that, these beings have even said such a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And at the moment myself, I don't have the experience or reason to doubt them so much, because this kind, especially like with these extended DMT experiences, these are being done under fairly stringent scientific, methods, even if you value those. The research is being done as best as possible. So, do we want to get on to another question, or do you have more you want to take on with
let's keep going. We've spent a lot of time talking about sex questions. I know we've got a lot more.
Yeah, we still have a couple more from him, and we can be even a bit briefer on those.
Also, this is sex theory of your categories, your levels there. My theory is that is all bullshit. There is level 0, and then a series of illusions.
Oh, I love Sek. He's far from the only one to think this sort of thing. Not necessarily that I think he's espousing like simulation theory, like that we exist in some kind of computer or whatever. I disagree, because it kind of gets into the answer of like, or it gets into the question of what does a bull do? Like, what is the purpose of a bull? This is a very powerful philosophical question that actually gets taught in like philosophical courses. And so like the question is like, Ellen, what do you think? Let me jump on. Do you agree with Sek that it's all just a series of, everything we're seeing is just a series of illusions? That kind of takes his previous question or comment to, I guess we could say, almost a logical extreme. But what do you think?
I would say disagree. I think that, yes, on a certain level, everything does connect back to level 0. However, there, like the prism example that I gave earlier, I think there's just more and more separation of the light as you go down the levels.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right.
I'm speaking in metaphors now, but the prism and the rainbow, that's kind of how I see it. Like level 0 is the white light, and then there's, the creation of physical reality all being split up through the prism into these different colors. And so there is this illusion, I suppose, of like separateness, of not being connected to everything else, every other point within the universe. But I think there is scientific research showing that, like, the tiny black holes that exist at the center of atoms, they do have little tunnels, wormholes, if you will, that connect to every other point.
Yeah.
So I think reality is stranger than we realize.
Yeah.
But I do think that the energy that composes everything is real.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, so, we're like, you have the Ein Sof outside. We are in a space in between. Like I said, we use an analogy because these concepts are so huge. We are in a space in between the legs, this very small space that basically the Ein Sof created. And this gets into the idea of the bowl. What is a bowl for? You ask most people, a bowl is for putting things in, for holding things. And that's one way to think of a bowl. But the other way to think of a bowl is it's something that actually creates space, and it creates separation. And so, like, there is the purpose behind, like, why did the Ein Sof engage in Simsum, creating that space, that separate, it was so that there could be an other. And so that's why I can't say, like, oh yeah, we're just all level 0. No, we're kind of there with permission, but we are something else. The universe is the penis that is yet to go into that vagina, but it is something outside of it. So anyway, but I think you hit at a great point, Ellen, that some of these concepts are like, can we even put them into words? You know what I mean? Like, does illusion properly, even if you use that, like, what does that really say? And like, how, like, that term itself, that concept itself is almost kitschy, compared to like the immensity of existence.
Yeah, I guess I also want to add in that, like, we were talking about interdimensional beings a few minutes ago. I don't think reality is just separated into like pure energy and then physical reality that we can interact with. I think maybe there's other dimensions, like somewhere between those or within those, like curled up inside of them.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway.
No, love it.
Just
love it.
Throwing out more mysteries there.
Yeah. Well, let's pivot and let's talk about crystals. Our most recent episode that we did was the crystalline entities, I believe was the title. And we got a couple of very interesting questions about crystals. And so let's jump to that. We got a couple more from Sek. His stuff was so good, I wanted to play it all. But then at the end, we have 2 that are not from Sek, and they are dynamite, and we're going to spend time with them. So, so let's go to the next comment from Sek.
Okay, now I'm listening to your crystalline entity, and I definitely agree with the 2 of you, and I've had very similar experiences. Might I suggest 2 other things? Try the same experiments with water and also the mushrooms themselves. Funny story. I used to sell drugs at Grateful Dead shows, and I was tripping, and I met this guy who described himself as a white wizard, and he looked the fucking part, right? He looked like if Merlin had been following the dead since the 70s, you know what I mean? So he hands me this glass bead. He gifted it to me that had like a stone and one larger stone like embedded in it, and then like bits of other little stones. And he hands it to me, and as he hands it to me, okay, I'm in all fairness, I'm tripping on all kinds of stuff. He hands it to me, and that when you said I saw galaxies, I had that same experience as soon as I touched this bead, and I started seeing just, I don't know if I would say like galaxies, like seeing the shape of the galaxies, but I started seeing like stars and space shit flying by my head. And then this dude was definitely tripping also. His pupils were as fucking big as my head. And he says, "Oh my God, I can see the universe in or I can see the galaxy in your eyes." I'm like, "Oh God, fuck." And then we hugged and cried, and then we continued getting fucked up and selling more drugs. But yeah, so there's something to that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we'll certainly try that.
Yeah, great suggestion.
Right. And again, this is another one of those instances like we were just talking about where somebody totally independently had a consistent experience to what we did with the crystals, where we saw like, a galaxy inside of it or stars, whatever.
Sounds like his experience was more extreme.
Well, Sex is an extreme guy. He really is.
We might need some help getting to that level of trippiness. But thank you for the recommendation. I mean, seriously, I can't wait to try some of this. And like, we might even go beyond water or another mushroom. Like, yeah. Who knows? Maybe we could talk to plants.
Yeah, right. I mean, the one thing I'll bring up very quickly is that, we've already talked about this on Sexoterica, that like water, like, bodies of water have spirits, like they are entities themselves, and so the idea that you could communicate with water, sure. Or I'm even thinking of, Masaru Emoto's work, the hidden messages in water, where he would, he would freeze water
with messages attached to them.
Yeah, with, some would have malevolent terms, other would have benevolent terms, and like the benevolent ones would be very orderly crystals, as to where the malevolent ones would be like, you'd see the chaos. And you can buy these books anywhere. They're very popular, and you can see it and go, holy shit, and I mean, there's all other kinds of very interesting things. We could get into feng shui around that, because the Japanese have very fascinating ideas around water. So yeah, like, I mean, talking to water, sure. and even the crystal aspect or crystalline aspect of that, is interesting. And yeah, wild story for sure. So let's go to one more from Sec, and then we're going to get into some other people's stuff. But this is still on the crystal subject, so we're staying there.
Something else that I'm sure you must have considered. Crystals might be something more like a communication device. A gateway of sorts that transmits communication from other things, or other realms, or other, to and from. So you might be hearing something coming through it rather than emanating from it itself. I don't know if that's accurate or not. It's just a thought I had trying to figure out things that have happened, but that might be another option.
Yeah, so I have to admit, the idea, I mean, this is something that crossed my mind, and I think part of the reason it crossed my mind is I'm reminded of, one of the contenders for the best show of all time, that being Stargate SG-1, and I'm reminded in the later seasons during the Hallowed Are the Ori, the Ori story arc, where Daniel Jackson finds these communication stones that allows them to, it was like they were made by the Alterans before, whatever they broke down. And they were able to communicate across galaxies, and like it literally touching the stone and putting it on the device. And as long as in the other galaxy you had an adjoining device, you could actually like exchange consciousnesses, between bodies, which might speak to what the Kabbalists did. When we were talking about earlier, like, wait, how did they travel without starships to these 18,000 worlds? And maybe maybe they use communication stones. Maybe they use crystals to like communicators. I mean, Ellen, what do you think? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, for real world examples, the closest that I can think of at this moment are mirrors, like scrying mirrors, or even like the mirrors that would have been in the temple, as you had described.
Right.
Being able to see spirits in these scrying mirrors, or what were they, brass? Were they brass in the temples?
I mean, there's
something like that.
Yeah, there's debate of what they were made up of, but all the same, yes.
But I think culturally, mirrors are seen as sort of a gateway to view spirits.
Sure.
That's something that's been around forever.
Right.
And I think maybe there's some truth to that. And typically, mirrors are made of metal or crystal. So I'm wondering, if mirrors are capable of showing us visibly some sort of spirit, or an interdimensional being or whatever, even if we can't see it without the mirror, then that would make that some sort of communication device in a way. Maybe there is some truth to that for crystals, but I don't know. I think we need to do more experiments ourselves for that.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I will say quickly, and I'm glad you brought up the mirrors. I mean, and again, understand, folks, that Kabbalah is my lens. It's not the truth. It's a truth. It's not the truth. All right. So, pardon me for me. I mean, I know plenty of other mystical schools as well, but it's the one that I generally will default to. There's not a lot of conversation about crystals within that. And I think that that's kind of an odd thing. And in fact, many times when I am going through Hebrew sources and I don't see mention of something, that's almost as powerful as if it did say something. In fact,
you think they're purposely avoiding it?
Exactly. Because a huge part of Judaism in general, but certainly Kabbalah, is, the concept of the oral Torah, or different Mishnahs. I mean, the Zohar talks about tons of different Mishnahs that nobody has. Nobody knows what the fuck these things say, but they're mentioned, and so, okay, so crystals must have been in this Mishnah, or something like that. It does. I can't say that with certainty yet, but I am often, because of the breadth of, I mean, folks, just you have 613 rules just in Judaism alone. I mean, every aspect of life is covered in that faith, in that religion. And when something's not covered, that's weird. like that should bring you pause. It's not that, oh, they didn't know. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Why didn't? Because they're telling you what shoe you should put on first. How are they not talking about what crystals do? That's weird. And my opinion, the likely answer is because no, it does have something to say about it, but it's not written down. And someone is carrying, or it's not written down in something we have at the moment. Maybe in something that hasn't been translated yet for sure. And there's plenty of that. Yes, fascinating concept that Sec laid out for sure. So let's move on to some other questions. How about that, Ellen?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So speaking of the crystals, one last bit on that, because this is a very short message that I got. If crystals are alive, what crystals are dead? And I thought this was very funny. It really brought me a chuckle. And
do you think it was a tongue-in-cheek question?
Well, I think it was a way of saying it was a question of, because we were defining life in that whole episode, right? And I think for a lot of people, one of the defining aspects of life is that it dies. And so, so that becomes the question. Okay, so if crystals are alive, which ones are dead? And I like it. It's a great way to think. It's a great thing to go oh, stop. Don't go too far with this crystals are alive
It's a good clarifying question.
Yeah.
Because it makes you rethink what you're actually saying. Because I don't think you're saying that they're alive in the same way that we understand life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm offering that they're they should be part of a kingdom, they should be their own kingdom and classified in that way. And that they may have a sapience or an intelligence, but
they don't fit a lot of the definitions of life.
Sure.
So I think for crystals, you can demineralize them. Mm-hmm. You can atomically change the structure of whatever's in them so that they do crumble and kind of change form into something entirely different.
Right.
Or you can, smash them into smaller bits, but that's not really killing them necessarily.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just taking the order that is the crystal and making it less orderly. So, like, maybe if you're talking about crystals being alive, the bigger a crystal is, the more order it has, the more capability it has in a way to, like, store energy or transmit energy or create a more powerful vibration.
Right.
So, like, a very tiny crystal might only have a very small potential to do that, whereas a larger one has a greater potential. I'm just, like, throwing this out there. I'm not saying this is absolutely true. Yeah. But, like, that's what would make sense to me.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, my response would basically be that, like, yeah, I understand that we think of death as a necessity of life, but, I mean, there are biological creatures on Earth that are effectively immortal. I mean, yes, they can be killed still, but, like, I mean, without getting into, like, the starfish or something like that, but I mean, like, they could really live forever. Like a crab, or not a crab, a lobster, as far as we know, kind of could live forever, but its shell crushes itself as it keeps growing. And that's why it dies. Okay. So, you have, I mean, go on Wikipedia. I mean, people can look this up. Like there are things that are what you could almost call an effective immortality. So I'm not entirely sold that anything living has to die. Like I'm not, or death could be on the order, or life, I should say, could be on the order of millions of years, and then what does death look like for something that lives that long? I mean, that becomes a much bigger, conversation. So I think saying what is death is just as hard to answer as what is life ultimately, what is alive.
Yeah. So like one of the things that scientists use to point out as a living organism is to say, like, well, it's composed of cells. It has cells.
Right.
Whether it's a cellular membrane or a cellular wall. Crystals don't have cells.
Right.
So if they were alive, they don't fit into the current definition of life.
Yeah.
Simply for that reason.
Yeah.
So there is no way for them to die as we understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so again, it's just something, like, I love the question. It's such a great thought experiment, but it's something where I think that we need to expand our definition of what exactly, just like my whole conversation about the level 1, level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4 was about influence and all this. Like, I think, we just kind of have to expand our brains a bit on what is actually something that has influence in the universe and what has, shall we say, a degree of conscious, influence. And when we get to that, it might be very interesting, how we treat things. It's kind of the same idea, like is an entire planet a life form? I would argue, sure, it's a superorganism, right?
And the cell membrane maybe is like the ozone layer.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Or the magnetic field.
Yeah. And so this is where, like, and hey, you and I, Ellen, especially, I mean, we're science fiction sweaties. I mean, we're like we're so fucking hardcore on sci-fi. Okay. At the same time, like, I totally disagree with the concept of, like, terraforming. When I was a teenager, sure, I thought that was a cool idea, but, like, I'm so against that because, like, you're altering an entire, what if a planet is a superorganism, like, you're altering an entire organism. Like, you're doing plastic surgery on a planet, basically, and that's gross, And so,
not to mention it would take thousands of years.
Exactly, yeah. And so that's kind of my point. Is that, like, I think we need to expand our definitions perhaps a bit, be a little more understanding of what exactly is life. Like, once you consider that the entire Earth is a superorganism, oh boy, you sure you want to buy plastic stuff? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it just changes everything. Not even just for yourself. So anyway, do you have more you want to get in on that one?
I appreciate the question, and I, again, understand where it's coming from.
Right.
I think that we're making an argument for life outside of the current definition of life. So, like, basically there is no dead crystal. There's either a crystal or there's not a crystal.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or there's many tiny, tiny crystals. Yeah,
right. It's just, it's the starfish or something, the starship, or the starfish of the mineral world. Anyway, so, okay, now this show is called Sexoterica.
Oh, we haven't gotten in the sex part
we
yet.
haven't talked about any sex whatsoever, and I'm surprised nobody messages like, well, how do crystals have sex? And I was just waiting for somebody to do that, and nobody did it.
When somebody carves them into a dildo.
Yeah, right. That is the answer. I love that. That's so good. Right. So, okay. Holy fuck. There's like 5 questions in this.
All right.
But
let's get started.
But let's roll. So here we go. If the priestess or whatever you call it has to have sex with demons, which we talked about this in episode 2, like at the end. So we didn't even get into like a large conversation around this. And this has to do with this ancient priesthood that I've brought up a few times and whatever, and has to do with the Hebrew temples and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So if the priestess or whatever you call it, which we call it Sova, but going on, whatever you call it, has to have sex with demons, who else do they have to have sex with? The priesthood? Is Ellen okay with this? Now, there's more.
I'm sure there's more.
Okay. Do you want to answer that part?
Am I okay with this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yes. I am fully supportive.
You're fully supportive. Wait, now, okay, hold on. I love you. Okay.
If that gives you any insight into my life.
Yeah. So it says, who else they have to have sex with? The priesthood?
Yeah.
So, well, let me answer that. Yes. And you answered it too. Yes. Like that. How deep do I want to go with this? Or do we want to go with this? I mean, but I think you're
as deep as you can go.
Yeah, right. There's so much, and I don't even know how to like present this information. It's out there. People can read about it, but like it needs to be put together in some kind of way. And the only way I can really think to do it would be like in like a novel, like I don't think it's something you can like write out in a book, in a nonfiction style book or something like that, but maybe. Anyway, so yeah, the idea, okay, so do they have to have, quote unquote, have to have sex with the priesthood? Now, have to sounds like non-consent. No, there's consent in this whole thing. Like all the way, like you're choosing this life. Everybody's choosing this, that lifestyle.
Yeah.
What they did thousands of years ago. Go ahead.
Can we pause on that? Because
yeah, sure.
I think this is important
Please.
to my answer to the question being a simple yes.
Yeah.
That yes is in context of the true priesthood actually existing as it used to.
Yes.
Which is like a highly selective organization.
Right.
There's very specific practices within the priesthood.
Right.
Like you can describe all this in as much detail as you want to. I'm just saying my answer, yes, depends on that.
Depends on it existing even.
Yes.
Exactly.
The Zadokite or Sadducean priesthood stands in contrast to much of modern rabbinic Judaism, but it has found popular movements among the Jewish people over the past 2,000 years. It sees itself as a continuous, unbroken lineage of esoteric knowledge stretching back to an antediluvian epoch. While the masses practice the overt, public-facing religions, the Zadokite priesthood carried a form of prisca theologia throughout history. Their pantheon of patriarchs includes figures like Enoch, Thoth, and Akhenaten, with the biblical Samson revered not as a mere strongman, but as the perfected ideal of their philosophy, a flawless union of physical power and divine purpose. Even more important are their matriarchs, Sarai, Rebecca, and Rachel. At the heart of their belief is a radical interpretation of the mystical concept of tikkun olam, the repair of the universe. In their cosmology, the universe is a gift from a feminine creative principle, the Ein Sof. The priesthood's sacred duty is to mend this universe of broken vessels which cause pain and violence. This cosmic repair is not just achieved through prayer or contemplation, but through a potent form of sexual alchemy. The male priests, through lives of extreme discipline, cultivate a powerful life force. This energy, transmitted during ritual union with the female priestesses, is transmuted within their bodies and, upon the tsava's orgasm, released as an energetic glue that mends the fabric of reality. This glue is known as Or Choser, the returning light. This sexual act, performed multiple times a day in many different ways and combinations among all members of the priesthood, is known as Itaruta delatata, an Aramaic term which means arousal from below. To the uninitiated, it would seem like debauchery. To the priesthood, it is a sacrament of the highest order, a necessary rite to fuel the great work of Tikkun Olam. The body is not a thing of shame. It is the first and most holy altar, with the woman's body being the true temple. Their ultimate goal is to beautify the universe into a perfected state, capable of reuniting with the Ein Sof to spark the birth of new life and new universes. Life's purpose, therefore, is pleasure, as pleasure fuels the great work and promotes the sacred tenet of biodiversity, which in turn ensures the resilience, continuation, and increased longevity, even immortality, of life itself. This esoteric belief system manifests in a doctrine of physical and spiritual discipline. The priesthood's hierarchy reflects this dualistic philosophy. A council of 12 male Cohens, led by a high priest, guides the priesthood. Yet, seated above them all is the High Tzavar, a singular priestess chosen from the many who acts as the direct oracle for the Shekinah, the divine will of the Ein Sof, and holds the power to veto any decision. While the male priesthood is largely, though not entirely, hereditary, the female line is usually maintained through acquisition and recruitment, with women of exceptional spiritual vitality brought into the fold and initiated through the orgiastic Feast of Yabulon, an ancient festival not unlike ones practiced by secretive groups in Poland, as well as Turkey and other territories of antiquity, even to this day. This is the secret golden thread lined throughout Kabbalah, and it is a chosen life of love, pleasure, and deeply spiritual meaning and actions, accepting the reality that each human, mind, spirit, and body, are their own God and their own co-creative being in a participatory universe that is discovering itself. It weds a primal, biocentric worldview to a mystical structure born from an unshakable conviction in its sacred duty. This sacred duty, the beautifying of the universe, is not something done from a top-down or power-over mindset, forcing others or influencing others to behave and believe a certain way as faiths like Christianity do. Rather, it wishes nothing more than to be left to its benevolent devices of love for the benefit and pleasure of all life.
Yeah, so I mean, let's explore this a bit, and I think we're actually going to get the opportunity to explore this through some of the other questions that the person has.
Okay.
Okay. And for those keeping score, in a recent SOVRYN Q&A, the same person had more questions about the priesthood, like how can I join? So if you want to hear that, that's in a recent SOVRYN Q&A where I kind of went over some of that stuff. So this all comes from the same person here. But anyway, so the next question. So yeah, I want to answer your question on that, Ellen. And I think, again, we'll explore it as we kind of go along.
Okay.
So the next part is, do the male priests have to have sex with demons?
If the demon requests it, maybe.
Well, so
does that ever happen?
In any writing I've ever seen, I've never seen where the priest where a male priest had sex with a demon. Mm-hmm. Without getting into like the conversation of succubi or Lilith, there is that, like, those kind of beings do exist within Kabbalah. And they do have sex. Like, I mean, you know, like the whole concept of wearing, you know, like the blue eye or wearing the red string, these are kind of gotten wrong, or at least they're different traditions than my lens. Okay. They come from the idea that, okay, we have to prevent Lilith from sleeping with our boys or our men or whatever, so that she can get impregnated and have more demons. Okay, so the idea that in Judaism that there are demonesses that have sex with human males is absolutely there. That's even without Kabbalah, like that's there. Okay, but is the priesthood having sex with these same demons? There's nothing like in that where it's like necessarily part of the temple service, and the reason for that is that what do the demons want? The demons can't do anything with male seed. Okay. The demons want basically the ruach produced from the female, from the human female. Like that aspect of Ruach. Ruach is a very complex subject. It has a lot of different aspects, a lot of different dashes that come after the word Ruach. Okay. So the demons are more interested in the energy from the female than they necessarily are from, whatever the male, or not. It's not whatever. There are things that the male offers to the sexual ritual equation in repairing the universe. Okay. Or making the universe more beautiful. Repair might not be the right word. So that's how, that's my answer to that. It's not to say that necessarily maybe it didn't happen. But then, like, what gender are we talking about with demons? Because demons, depending upon the aspect of these creatures, do have genders. And again, that's not even, we don't even have to go into like different versions of, Hebrew mysticism to understand that. Just even in rabbinic Judaism, this is accepted. Any questions on that, Ellen? Anything?
Yeah, there? I have a lot of questions, but I kind of want to stay on point. Maybe we can bring them up a different time.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we can hold on to those. So the next part, next question, with marriage appearing to be a core part of every religion, including Judaism, what does marriage mean within this context? Does the priesthood still marry, or is that why some of them never did? They still have to have children to keep the bloodline going, right? This all seems very confusing. So some of this I talked about, that same Sovryn Q&A that I mentioned, and if I think of it, I'll link to it in the show notes. So is there still marriage within the priesthood? Yes. It's a very different and far more powerful thing than any kind of like traditional marriage you could possibly imagine. And it's actually something that you and I, Ellen, we did before we got legally married, that we went through. Mm-hmm. We were calling each other husband and wife, years before we actually got legally married.
Right.
And we went through the ritual for that.
And there is a traditional ritual in Judaism.
Yeah. And it comes out of a legend, a story that is wildly public, that many people could know about, that even like Christian, sects, as an SECTS, practice, which was, Joseph and Aseneth.
And this ceremony is practiced by the priesthood, or it was.
Yes, exactly. Right. And that gets into a very deep thing where there is the idea that when you go through this process, if the woman is, in this instance, if the woman is not, biologically, shall we say, Hebrew, that this process would literally change. Basically, the argument would be within the priesthood that would change her genes. Okay, now you can read this story has been, and like it's almost like a novella. It's very popular. It's not in Torah. It is there, but it's not there. Like it's alluded to, but then there's expansions beyond that outside of Torah.
Joseph, known in modern culture for wearing the famed coat of many colours as a child, the son of Jacob, now known as Israel, would become a powerful man in the land of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh himself. And there in Egypt lived a maiden named Aseneth. She was no common woman. She was the daughter of Pentephris, the high priest of Heliopolis, and her beauty was so renowned it was said to rival the goddesses of that land. She lived in splendid isolation in a high tower adorned with the riches of the Nile, and from her youth she had scorned all suitors. Her heart was proud, and her devotion was given entirely to the stone and silver idols of her father's religion. It came to pass that Joseph, in his duty overseeing the grain stores of Egypt, journeyed to the lands of Pentephris. His arrival was that of a king, and Pentephris, seeking to honour the viceroy, sought to join him in marriage to his daughter Aseneth. He brought her forth from her tower, radiant in her silks and jewels, to meet the Hebrew lord. But when Joseph laid his eyes upon her, he saw not only her beauty, but the spiritual gulf that lay between them. When Pentephris urged him to greet her with a kiss of kinship, Joseph drew back, his expression unyielding. "It is not fitting," he declared, "for a man of the Ein Sof to kiss a strange woman who blesses lifeless idols, and eats from their table the bread of strangulation." His words, a stark rejection of her entire world, struck Aseneth with the force of a physical blow. In that moment, the man of the living Ein Sof had revealed the deadness of her own. Shattered, she fled to her chambers, and her world collapsed. The idols that once seemed powerful now appeared as mute, useless stone. The life of luxury she had known felt like a hollow prison. What followed was a profound act of will. Aseneth cast her precious gods from her window, watching them shatter upon the stones below. She tore off her fine linen and royal purple, dressing herself in a simple dark garment of mourning. For 7 days and 7 nights she remained in her room, fasting upon bread and water, with ashes on her head, weeping in abject repentance for a life lived in falsehood. On the morning of the 8th day, as the first light touched her window, her chamber was filled with a light not of the sun. A heavenly being stood before her, his face like lightning, and his garments as white as snow. He announced that her repentance had been seen in the highest heavens, and that her prayers were answered. He told her she was cleansed, and that her old life was no more. From that day forward, he declared, her name would not be Aseneth, but City of Refuge, for in her many would find their way to God. To seal this metamorphosis, the angel presented her with a honeycomb of purest white, telling her that it was the bread of life eaten by the angels. As she ate, a mystical fire coursed through her, purging the last vestiges of her former self and filling her with a new and holy spirit. When Joseph returned, he found not the proud pagan princess he had rejected, but a woman transformed, imbued with a quiet and luminous grace. Seeing the profound change in her, he recognized her as his own. He joyfully embraced her, reborn and made new. And so, Aseneth, the daughter of the Egyptian priest, was joined in marriage to Joseph, the son of Israel. She became a true matriarch of the Hebrew people, bearing him 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, whose descendants would become mighty tribes in the nation she had so powerfully and completely chosen to make her own. The tale of Joseph and Aseneth is not just a story, but a guide for those with the keys to unlock its hidden sexual alchemy. The ritual of Aseneth, the rite of conversion, is one of the most ancient rituals of the phallic religion that is Judaism. It is the transmutation of flesh and spirit in the crucible of sacred union, using the masculine and feminine divine as the supreme alchemical agents. It is predicated on the understanding that a person can be remade through the sacred fire of the sexual act, transformed from a profane vessel into a consecrated chalice, fit to receive and amplify the Ein Sof's essence. Phase 1. The assessment of the vessel. The rite begins with the initiate presenting herself before the priest. She comes as an offering, stripped bare for honest assessment. The Kohen, the master of the rite, appraises her not for her beauty alone, but for her discipline, her strength, and the clarity of her spirit. He assesses the temple of her body to determine if it is a vessel worthy of the fire, a form capable of containing the divine influx, the shefa he intends to pour into her. He must then reject her current state, not her intrinsic essence. This body, he declares, is still a temple to foreign gods, the gods of vanity, of mundane pleasure, of an undisciplined past. It is not yet fit for the great work. It is crucial that she understands that her physical form, her sexuality, is the raw material, the prima materia, which must be purified before it can be consecrated. Phase 2, the consecration of the temple. The initiate then enters her ordeal, 7 days in the crucible of isolation. This period is a trial of intense physical and spiritual purification, designed to remake her body into a sacred space. Her regimen is absolute. Ritual ablutions. She immerses herself daily in a mikveh, a ritual bath rooted in ancient tradition, to cleanse the vessel not just of physical dirt, but of old energetic signatures and profane experiences. Physical discipline. She undertakes practices that build physical strength and spiritual openness. long-held postures designed to challenge her limits and clear the channels of her body for the flow of sacred energy. Her flesh must learn a new language of potent submission. Sexual fasting. She denies herself all forms of orgasmic release. Her desire is not to be dissipated, but to be cultivated and concentrated into a powerful, focused hunger, an offering that only the priest will be permitted to satisfy. Phase 3. The alchemical union. On the 8th day, the temple is prepared. The initiate, bathed and anointed, awaits the priest in the consecrated space. He enters not as a mere man, but as the mashpia, the giver, the active principle, the channel for the Or Yashar, the direct light of God. He is the embodiment of the divine masculine. She, in turn, fully assumes her role as the mekabel, the receiver, the sacred keli or vessel. Her purpose is to receive the light and, through her unique feminine alchemy, transform it into Or Choser, the returning light that ascends to the heavens. She is the furnace, he is the fire. The union itself is the heart of the working. It is a slow, deliberate weaving of energy. With every touch and every breath, he transmits his priestly essence into her. His seed is understood to be more than biological. It is the Shefa, the divine influx, a liquid light carrying the gnosis of his holy lineage. In the moment of supreme union, the Yichud, their two energies merge in a controlled, metaphysical explosion. This is the true alchemy. The lead of her profane past is burned away in the orgasmic fire, and the gold of a consecrated Hebrew soul is forged in its place. He has not simply taken her body, he has claimed and remade her soul. Phase 4. The sealing of the vessel. In the aftermath, he does not abandon her. She is now a willing, consensual slave of love to the priesthood, and the priest is her most ardent protector. He holds her as the potent energies settle. This is the sealing of the work. He blesses her body, no longer a profane object, but a holy instrument dedicated to the golden path. It is in this state of luminous exhaustion and rebirth that he gives her the new Hebrew name. It is whispered into her soul, sealing the transformation that was wrought in her flesh. She is then dressed in white linen, a symbol not of untouched girlhood, but of her new status as a consecrated vessel. She has been converted not by words, but by the undeniable fire of sacred sexuality, forever bound to him and the potent tradition he commands.
So yeah, marriage is absolutely a thing, but it's also a marriage that is clearly like on the open side because of the service that has to be done, quote unquote, has to be done within the priesthood itself, within, the temple, or wherever that temple may be. Within the temples is really what should be said on that. Let's see. So they still have to have children to keep the bloodline going, right? Yes and no. And okay. So one other point they brought up is this why some of the priesthood let's see, does the priesthood still marry, or is that why some of them never did?
So there's a whole population that exists outside of the priesthood
right.
That's still Jewish.
Yep.
Or practices Judaism.
Right.
Right. So they're the ones having children. The priesthood kind of doesn't need to do that unless they want to. Yes.
Yeah. So there's a couple things to get in with this. Yeah, there are in Torah, okay, there are stories where, yes, like two of Aaron's sons never married. In fact, or like we talk about like the story of Samson, where, which is an incredibly central figure to this whole priesthood, that like, oh, there's no woman in Israel for me. Okay. It's not that they weren't willing to get married. They were, it's just, they were looking, they needed something else. And
they recruited.
Yeah, they recruited. Right. Exactly. Yes. So, you still, like, a priest would still get married. Okay. And that would still be a part of it. And in fact, in Kabbalah, one of like the popular requirements to this day is that they should be married. The mystic that is engaging in the, going through the palaces and all this should be someone that is married. They should also be over 40. That's a newer restriction. And then the idea that they should also have children. That's also a newer restriction. Like there are some of these restrictions that came out of a response to the Sabbatean revolt. We don't have to get into all that history right here. Okay. But to speak about the having children. Okay. The mystic to practice, does not have to have children. The priest to practice does not have to have children. We know that right out of Torah. Like that's there. Okay. And they don't even have to be married, but being married, does end up becoming a part of the equation when it gets perfected in Samson. Okay. But it gets perfected by him recruiting, like you said, Ellen, and this is where, and I'll get into the childhood thing or having children thing in a second. Okay. So a major part of what this priesthood would do is, they would have an entire like feast day where they would bring in basically new recruits, from other nations all over the place. Okay. Now, how can you bring these people in? How could they possibly be quote unquote worthy? Doesn't mean anyone's better or whatever. It's just different. How could they be, allowed to come into this, incredibly holy practice, right? Quote unquote holy. And so there's a couple texts you have to look at. One of them is debatably by the Ramban, Nachmanides, okay, many sage centuries ago, in Igeret HaKodesh, in which he talks about how there are Jews who are not, we'll use the word Jews just for simplicity. There are Jews who are not born of Israel, and then there are people born of Israel that are not Jews. His point is that it's quote unquote the soul that actually matters, and that there are people who may not have been born into Judaism or, born into to some, like genetic Jewishness that are Jews. And their calling is basically to come home. And that's part of the reason also that there's this recruitment within the priesthood itself. So what does this mean about having children? This concept goes much deeper into where, say, like there's a legend of Abraham and Sarah, where even though Sarah didn't have a child until Isaac, they were having spiritual children. They were birthing quote unquote Hebrew souls all over the place all the time, because Sarah and Abraham were having nonstop sex. Okay. So the idea of having children is something to not think about so literally, like that you have to have biological children. You can actually have, like, you can birth souls through the sexual act in this priesthood. So there's my answer to that. So anyway, this is something I think we'll be exploring for quite a while, because it, over many episodes, and it's not something I want it to be like the central focus necessarily of. I mean, it's a part of our practice, yours and mine, Ellen. And so, it's important for us to discuss, and if there's questions, of course we'll answer them, but again, I don't necessarily want it to be the focus.
Yeah, and I think it needs multiple episodes if we're going to talk about this really in depth.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think a good point, to bring up, like starting off with the question, like, I mean, I think I touched most of the points, but, starting it off with like the idea of like having sex with demons, like, is that something you have to do? Well, I mean, there are, I mean, that's the reason there is a hood in priesthood.
We can banish these demons if we don't want them around.
For
right?
sure. Yeah. I mean, that's a big aspect of it. I mean, like when you read about how the legends, shall we say, but there's always truth in legends, the legends around how Solomon, like built his temple. Now there's so much to unpack within that, but the legend goes, he was controlling demons to be able to do that. Okay. So the priesthood has that ability. So it's something that, yes, like there's always control, around this, and there's always protection around this. And that's not, we didn't even touch on that. Like, what is the priesthood doing? If the Sova, if the priestess is the one with actually all the power, what is the point to the priests?
Yeah. Are they protecting the Sova?
That's exactly what they're doing. I mean, there's more beyond that, but that is a huge part of it. And that includes from the demonic realm. So, like there's so much within this,
Brian the Demon Slayer.
Yeah. Was that The Last Witch Hunter with Vin Diesel? Here I go. No. Yeah. I mean, again, this is such a complex thing. I do recommend, like, if people are interested in looking into this beyond what I've talked about, just start with the Sadducees and start unpacking from there. That's all I'm going to recommend people if they want some kind of like homework around this and they don't just want to hear this from me, from us. That's what I recommend that everybody go and check out. So Ellen, again, first Q&A in the bag. I loved it.
We did it.
Yes, we did it. And we did a lot. I feel like we covered so much ground. And just a lot of fun. So folks, if you want to get in your questions, there's so many ways to do it. You can get in the YouTube comments, Spotify comments. What do you got?
We love getting questions. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Yeah.
This is really great. I hope we get to do this again.
Yeah. If we get another large influx of questions, of course, we'll do whole episodes on that. Sometimes we just do them at the beginning of an episode. So get them in anytime you want and we'll get to them. Even we don't have to wait for a Q&A. So, and of course you can email the show at fu@xxx.tech.net. Fuck. I messed it up.
You almost did it. You got to say sovereign. Wait, FU.
You got it too.
Oh no.
It's late, folks. Oh, it's late. And that's another thing, folks. The Q&A episodes, they're fast and loose. Okay. So
What? I don't know that.
Anyway,
it's
you do it.
fu@xxtech.net. That's fu@xxxtech.net.
Like a radio professional. You are so good. For so many reasons.
I don't know about that, but
That's right.
we got it out, I think.
We did. Oh,
Intelligibly,
wait,
maybe.
are the demons coming now? Oh, no.
Well, if we keep getting questions, we'll know that we're making sense.
Yeah. There we go. So, all right. We will wrap this one up. And, folks, we will see all of you on the other side.
Woo!
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
There must be more out there. New kingdoms to destroy and corrupt.